Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah insider for KSL Sports. That's Josh Bennett. Bennett, man, how you doing, dude? Sunday night, you okay? Enjoying a chill night?
Yeah, it's pretty chill night. Got that long weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, so a lot of football, a lot of food, a lot of laying low, a lot of not wanting to go back to work tomorrow. But I have a feeling that there won't be a ton of work done tomorrow. It'd be different kind of work, you know what I mean? Different kind of work.
Yeah, I wish I could enjoy my weekend, but now that it's at the end of the season, it gets shoved into your face from everywhere. It's been a wild couple hours. Obviously, we're here recording Sunday night, and it's been quite the whirlwind. I was having, a nice little Thanksgiving dinner, a little post-Thanksgiving dinner since I was in Kansas with my and so, but things are happening to say the least. So a lot out there. We'll try to dive into some of it. Obviously, with everything that we're talking about, obviously we can't share all the details, but we'll do our best to hit on, some of the things that we've been vaguely tweeting about. I know people hate that. I get it. I hate it too. I hate that I do it. But
sorry,
it's just, you do your best to kind of prepare people for what could come. And I know people want more. They deserve more, honestly, but it comes with, you got to be responsible with this stuff, with this information. So we'll do our best to address those things on tonight's episode. But we'll also talk briefly about the 2025 season. I think a lot of Utah fans should be really proud of what Utah accomplished this year. Obviously, some meat left on that bone, unfortunately. And I think there's certainly a feeling of disappointment and a frustration, from certain people and important people that matter, people that have an impact on this type of stuff. And I think that's a good thing, right? Obviously be proud of 10 wins, but those 2 losses are gonna stick in the craw of a handful of a lot of people up there. So there's a lot of motivation to even build on this. So Bennett, man, where do we want to start? I'll ask you first, since you've had a nice chill night.
Let's touch on the 2025 season a little bit and pay some respect to that. I know it's not totally over. It's not totally time to put a bow on everything, but just finished off a 10-win regular season for the first time since 2019. That 10-2 mark is a number that a lot of people thought. Yeah, a lot of people thought Utah could get there. Kind of felt like 9 was a very popular. 9-3 was a very popular record prediction for Utah. I think 10-2 is where you start to get into that optimistic crowd, and 11-1 is where you start to get into the red. But 10 wins is one of those things. A lot of people thought that Utah could hit that mark this season, and I think we kind of talked real quick. How did Utah get there? What it means that Utah got there, and maybe what that bowl game might look like for Utah.
Yeah, no, I think going back to preseason, right? I think a lot of people were in the same boat. We're looking at this team and coming off a 5-7 year, right? Where there wasn't a lot of really positive things to build on. I think last season did a number on Utah fans, and you get to the preseason stuff, and there's a lot of talk about this Utah squad, and a lot of talk around the offensive line and about the additions that they made through the transfer portal. And I think just people were very hesitant to buy in. And optimistically, I think a lot of people, myself included, talked about this team, being an 8-4 team. Being a 9-3 team, and that sort of being a solid year, a good year even. I always prefaced it that, I feel like this is an 8-4 team with the potential to get to 9, 10, maybe 11 wins if they got the plays that they needed to in certain games. And, I think what we learned this year, Devin Dampier made big improvements in his game. He answered a lot of questions that people had about his, acclimation to the Big 12 level. you look at some of his numbers and some really intriguing, some really solid numbers. He improved his completion rate. He was much more efficient, and obviously that touchdown to interception ratio looks really, really, really nice this year.
Really nice.
Uh, so he made big time improvements, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I think this offense, with the personnel Utah had, really fit him well and allowed him to flourish this season. And I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he meant to the turnaround this year. Um, the swagger, the confidence, the personality, and all of that he brought to the program, I think was really, really important for Utah to get it turned around and to really, like, especially on that offensive side of the ball, for that group to believe again, right? Because last year, when you struggle like Utah did last year, that can weigh on players quite a bit. And I think Dev did a tremendous job of building up the confidence of players around him, and that's not something that he gets enough credit for. So I think for me, when you talk about this team getting to 10 wins, I think Devin Dampier deserves a lot of credit for making certain improvements, providing balance to this offense, and really raising the confidence level, boosting the confidence of a lot of players around him, and being that sort of conduit for improvement this year.
Yeah, no, Dampier was fantastic this season. It was absolutely the biggest question. Can he make that jump from Mountain West Conference football to Big 12 football? Can he, become more accurate, get more, raise that completion percentage? Can he limit the turnovers to go from, 12 touchdowns passing and 12 interceptions to 22 touchdowns passing and 5 interceptions? I mean, you're basically doubling your touchdown total and cutting your interceptions in half while playing against a higher level of talent. Like, he absolutely can make that jump and did make that jump and was necessary for that. And I think Utah still has some of those, those quarterback, that quarterback trauma just from the past. But, Utah got itself in a good rut, like had some good quarterbacks strung together with the, Huntley, and then you get into Cam Rising, and it's like, okay, like maybe Utah's starting to figure out the quarterback position. And then you see what happens when Cam Rising goes down, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, is Utah back in this rut with quarterbacks? Is Utah going to struggle at this position again? And then, Dampier comes in and, just another quarterback does his job, takes the offense to new heights. And then when he goes down and like gets injured, you see this Bird Ficklin guy come in and do his thing. And it was good to see the quarterback room. I think that's the most important position in sports, in my opinion. It's I know you're only on the field half the time, but it's just such a tough position. It really is. There's so much responsibility to hold that position. The next closest I'd say is a pitcher, but pitchers, you're in a rotation, right? So, good year from Dampier, and I think Jason Beck also offensive coordinator. One of those things. So I started following Utah football 2008. That's where I came into the picture. So I only know 2 offensive coordinators that have ever been really effective for Utah.
Mm-hmm.
That's Andy Ludwig, round 1, Andy Ludwig, round 2, and then now, Jason Beck. So in between all of that, there's been offensive coordinator carousels that have made this, you don't know what you're going to get from that position. And that Kyle wants to have a certain kind of game plan. So like having Beck come in and complement the way that, Kyle likes to do things and see that, Beck kind of follow that Utah mold. Yeah. Those are the 2 biggest things, OC and QB.
Yeah. I think Jason Beck, he probably deserves more credit, right? You want to give all the credit to the players for going out and executing, but I do think Beck really deserves the most credit here. I think with what he brought to this program with his offense, it really was a perfect marriage of schematics and personnel, culture, and creativity. I think what he did in sort of managing the personnel that Utah had in place and marrying his scheme together with the strengths of the personnel and the culture, right? Kyle Whittingham loves to play a physical brand of football, toughness, run it down your throats. They want to run the ball. Beck, that's what he did, at New Mexico with Dampier. And then you add in, you bring in Kerry Rogers, you bring in away Sean Parker, you add in, Daniel Bray, and suddenly, Beck has a lot of exciting options, in that run game. And then obviously with the emergence of Bird and figuring out a way to maximize both Dampier and Ficklin over the final month of the season to get those guys, opportunities and reps and making an impact, a significant impact. I think that's all unique stuff that I'm not sure, other coordinators are capable of. I know, the Andy Ludwig. I think Ludwig is one of the brilliant minds of football. I think he understands the game at a level that is just, we can only we can't fathom. Yeah, he knows this game so thoroughly, but I think he can even he gets stuck in his own way. Like he's his own worst enemy in a lot of ways, Ludwig, because he can overthink things and cannot. And I think Beck just provided sort of, we'll roll with it. We'll figure it out as we go. We'll make the best of what we have, and we'll go from there. And he didn't overthink things. He didn't try to. He provided just an element of creativity that I think was refreshing, of just figuring out on the fly. And I think Beck really was, a big part, obviously a huge part of Utah's turnaround this season. And when you go back to the offensive coordinator search last December, right, we all remember the names Ben Arbuckle and Mac Leftwich. And I really think Utah landed on the ideal hire, hindsight being 2020. Beck was perfect for Utah football this season with what they had on the offense side of the ball this year.
Yeah, I think we've said it at different points in the year that Utah kind of ended up with who was meant to be, if you will, at that OC slot, and 10 wins.
Yep. So big deal. Defensively, started well, started fairly strong. It looked like this team was it's interesting how this defense performed throughout the year. So to start the year, the defensive line looks great, looks dominant, looks great against the run. And then the secondary was, a big worry. It was a big concern for a lot of people. Does Utah have the defensive backs to be effective in the Big 12? And, as the season progressed, midway through the season, you're feeling really, really good about this defense and what they're able to do, both up front and, in the back end. And when we got to the end of the year, right, 3 big games, Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas. I shouldn't say 3 big games, but 3 big outings for those programs against this Utah defense. And suddenly, we're left here at the end of the season with some significant questions about the defense. And I think there's still a lot of positives, but just ending on this note for the defense specifically, it's such a weird feeling when you're talking about Utah football, right? This is not what we're accustomed to. And I think the defense deserves a ton of credit for making the plays that they did throughout the year, right? And they were still among the best for the majority of the year, but the final month of the season certainly leaves a sour taste in the mouths of many Utah fans.
Yeah, it's 762 rushing yards in the last 2 games. That's crazy. Like those are
ouch,
crazy numbers. And you look at, I'll just go rapidly, like rushing yards allowed per game over the course of the season, from start to finish: 84, 65, 121, 173. That's Texas Tech. 261, West Virginia. A little bit of game script there, a little bit of a true freshman quarterback kind of situation. Got to run the ball. That's all he could do. So 261. But then 149, 202, 38 against Colorado, 206, 133, and then the 472 against Kansas State, 290 against Kansas. It's just uncharacteristic, and it just seemed that Utah just couldn't figure out that, hey, I'm going to attack this hole. Just kidding. I'm going to take a step right here. I'm going to attack this hole, and nobody's there. Nobody's home, and there's wide open gaps, and that's where you saw a lot of these explosive run plays. It wasn't, during the Baylor game, there were some big throws that made down the field. That's Baylor's game. They're gonna sit there and they're gonna test you downfield, and they're gonna every now and then they're gonna succeed, right? But that was kind of the concern early season, was limiting these explosive plays through the air, but you end the season worried about the explosive plays on the ground. So
it's weird. All of the explosive plays. I'd be curious, like over the last 2 weeks, if we could compare the amount of explosive plays in these last 2 games on the ground specifically, and maybe compare it to what 2019, 2021. I would be really curious to see what these last 2 games compared to those seasons overall, because what I learned this year is you've got to be with this defense specifically. That defensive tackle group is so important to everything else. It is vital that Utah has a couple of studs along the interior, at defensive tackle, because everything else hinges on their success. Utah's got to be able to control the middle of the line of scrimmage. And, watching the game this weekend, Michigan versus Ohio State, it was Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt talked a lot about Ohio State and being really, really strong in the middle of their defense, not just the defensive tackle spot, but linebackers, safety. They've got 4 first-rounders in the middle of their defense. And that, to me, when he said that, for me, that clicked in my head, that Utah's got to be so much better, up the middle, because that sets the tone for everything else. You've got to be stout up front. And I think Utah did the best that they could with the personnel that they had available to them, right? Dallas Vakala, he wasn't fully healthy. Lander Barton dealing with some nagging things. John Hall obviously still making that transition to linebacker. Teo Johnson, Jackson Benny figuring things out at safety and trying to manage there and all of that. And I think Aliki Vamahi, he also dealing with some injuries throughout the year, a veteran, but he's not the biggest body. He's obviously being a senior guy, but I just think Utah going into the offseason, that's going to be a big focal point, I think, is addressing the middle of the defense moving forward, because that's got to be rock solid for Utah to get back to sort of the defensive success that we've seen in the past.
Absolutely. And that's just a kind of a weird spot to be, right? Like usually it's like, okay, Utah needs to get better here, here, and here. And it's usually offensively. And you think about where Utah needs to get better. I would say the 2 positions, and we'll talk, through the month of December about what Utah needs, who to go after and stuff. But the D tackle position and the linebacker position are those 2 spots that you feel that's spot number 1 and spot number 2 that I feel like Utah needs to get better this off season, and in terms of player development or who you bring in, but that's the middle, that front part end of the defense, and then the safety position too. I know that they got banged up early, losing Nate Ritchie, losing Rabbit Evans. That's not fun. So
yeah,
we'll see. But
yeah, I think so. What do we want to transition to next? I think hitting on that. I think
where do we think Utah's going to play for the postseason? Maybe to kind of like talk about like what's next on like this actual season. Like bowl eligibility is obviously 6 games. Got that. That's easy. That's done.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, don't look at Big 12 bowl tie-ins for Utah. Utah is going to play in one of the Pac-12 bowl tie-ins for this year. So if you're hoping for a Pop-Tarts Bowl like everybody else in the entire country, Utah will not be playing in a Pop-Tarts Bowl. They will be playing in the Alamo Bowl. They'll be playing in the Vegas Bowl, or they'll be playing in the Holiday Bowl. So I think take a couple minutes to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good next spot to go.
Yeah, I think so. I think, 3 solid bowls, right? 3 solid bowl games. Utah's been to all 3. And, the Alamo Bowl back in 2019, the Holiday Bowl. When was the last time they were there? Was that 2016? No, that wasn't that year. That was the Foster Farms Bowl, 2016. When was the Holiday Bowl? 2018. 2018. That's what that was. Jason Shelley in 2018. They played at Qualcomm Stadium against Northwestern. That's what that was. That was the Holiday Bowl. Yeah. So not a great experience the last couple of bowl games. I think the last good memory. Yeah, I think the last good memory for Utah in a bowl game was actually the Vegas Bowl. Foster's and the Heart of Dallas Bowl. Man, we need to get back to Utah winning bowl games.
Not even the Vegas Bowl, because 2023 Utah's in the Vegas Bowl against Northwestern. Nobody plays, and it's 14.
Oh yeah, they played the Vegas Bowl in 23.
It was the last bowl win was in 2017. Utah in the Zaxby's Heart of Dallas Bowl thumped on West Virginia.
Yeah. Oh man.
And coincidentally, that's probably the last time bowl games really meant something.
Right? Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, I think so. And obviously with the playoff expanding, like there's only a handful of bowl games that I think really get, generate juice for fans now and even for programs, right? And players and players don't want to play in these games and potentially risk themselves and hurt themselves. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens for Utah in this bowl game scenario. I think of those 3, I'm a selfish person. Okay. I won't deny it. I'm a selfish person. It's, it's late December. We've got a lot going on in the month, already dealing with a lot of stuff with my phone. I keep checking my phone to make sure I'm not missing any important texts while we're recording. Like this is a busy time. And so, I want convenience when we're talking about events like this. So give me the Vegas Bowl, December 31st, New Year's in Las Vegas. I'm selfish. I want to have a good time, regardless of the bowl game outcome. And I'm sure I'd have a great time in San Antonio. I'm sure I'd have a great time in wherever they do the Holiday Bowls. It's still San Diego. I would have a great time anywhere, but give me the good time in a nearby place where I can drive there at an affordable cost. Give me that.
Yeah. And I think you'll probably end up with that. Because the Alamo Bowl has never seen USC. And because the Alamo Bowl's never seen USC, they're probably going to take USC. So that leaves Utah in that Vegas Bowl slot or that Holiday Bowl slot. And I want to say that people are kind of connecting Washington as that Holiday Bowl fill-in. So it's probably Utah in the Vegas Bowl. That's what it looks like. It's leaning that way. That's what it's looking like. So you're probably going to get what you want there, Bartle. And it's probably going to be against an Iowa, Nebraska, or an Illinois. And I think there's a lot of really cool storylines around a Utah-Iowa Vegas Bowl. You talk about like those coaches, combined coaching tenures are like, you can age yourself back to the dinosaurs.
Yeah, 80 years at least.
Yeah.
Kirk versus Kyle. Great name. Bowl game matchup. Kirk and Kyle. You've got, 2 Utah of the West or Utah of the East and Iowa of the West, so supremacy there. You've got battle of tight end U, obviously with Utah and what they've done at the tight end position. Obviously Iowa, they've got a longer history. They've had a head start, but Utah is certainly catching up and putting a lot of tight ends into the NFL lately. But, big source of pride there. Defensive programs, where offense is sometimes questionable, not for Utah this year, obviously. I think that would be a great matchup. And then the uniform matchup would be fantastic. A little red versus black and yellow. Ooh, give me that.
I like it. And they call Utah Red Iowa. Maybe Utah wins that game and then Utah can call Iowa Yellow Utah. I don't know. Just whatever. It sounds like a fun matchup. I'm with you. If gonna go somewhere around New Year's, like go somewhere with a lot of entertainment, a lot of there's gonna be something going on in Vegas. They're a lot of fun to get to. You know that there's gonna be a bunch of Utah fans that'll make the trip, and it'd be. I think that would provide the most fun overall. Where we're talking about bowls that have kind of lost bowl season that's kind of lost its luster. Again, if it ain't Pop-Tarts, I really don't care about it too much unless it's a rose or an orange or a Fiat, whatever. Right. But it's but those are playoff spots, right? So have fun and see who plays, because like ever since like around that 2018 2019 when Utah stopped winning bowl games, that's when players started sitting out to prepare for the NFL draft, and now players are sitting out because of the transfer portal. And it's just the postseason and all of college football is kind of a mess. But a night in Vegas could be good for the fans and maybe for the players too, right? That game is I want to say kicks off at like 12:30, so I think there's all sorts of time for activities after that too.
Oh yeah, dude. And honestly, what better way to spend New Year's Eve than watching just a defensive slugfest in the Vegas Bowl? Okay, it doesn't get much better than that. It's a 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff, so you're going to have an afternoon game, and then you're going to have all night to either take care of yourself in Vegas, regardless of win or loss. Obviously, that's going to lead you down different avenues. In terms of the entertainment you seek, but give me that. So that's what I think. I think of the three, let us be selfish a little bit, go for convenience, drive down to Vegas for the night or for the day, make a day trip of it, have fun. New Year's Eve in Vegas could be a lot worse. Because again, right, it is bowl game season and it is December. This is a stressful time for a lot of people, and could be worse things out there.
It's an easy one to travel to that doesn't cost a ton of money for the majority of Utah fans. So just I hope to see that. Along these lines, kind of close that out, like just some couple thoughts, like what you hope to see, like leading up to that bowl game, why you make the most of this time. Like if you become bowl eligible and you're not aware, you get extra practices. So you get extra time to look at your players, see who's there, develop them and stuff like that, which is extra important in today's world because now you have transfer portal, right? So you want to see some of these guys, maybe practice some of these guys that didn't get a ton of playing time during the season. Check out those true freshmen that, Utah's playing a lot of freshmen and sophomores this year, but get some more eyeballs on some of these guys, see who's still checked in, see who's still focused and paying attention and all of that. And you got to make some business decisions this offseason. And that's what I hope Utah's focus is going to be leading up to that December 30th, December 31st, or January 2nd, whichever bowl slot they fall into. December 31st, Vegas, probably where you're going to see Utah fall. But for the month of December, that's kind of focus. You got anything like to add on that? Like,
no, I think that's what we call a perfect segue because that gets us to the transfer portal. And obviously that opens up next month, in the month of January. It's no longer at the end of the season. I think a lot of people are still anticipating, the portal opening up now that the season is over on Monday. It's not. It's been moved from the conclusion of the season to the month of January. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic because as you're talking about the importance of practices, I think it's going to be super interesting to see what sort of impact these practices actually have when you start talking about the transfer portal, right? I was having a conversation with somebody pretty recently, and he said, having this month where you don't have everything in the month of December, where it's you're trying to finish up the season, you're potentially competing for a conference championship, you're then preparing for a bowl game, you've got signing day going on, you're starting to open up recruiting for the next cycle, you've got the transfer portal opening up at the same time, and so you're trying to recruit other players in the portal while also trying to retain play. There was just so much going on in the month of December, all while you still got Christmas and Christmas shopping and all that stuff, real life stuff, right? These coaches still have to do that stuff. And so there was just a lot going on. And I think moving this transfer portal window to the month of January, where all of a sudden Now, guys, now we're getting into the second semester of an academic calendar year, and what sort of impact does that have? You're now going to have a month where you can talk to players, you can have conversations about the next season, you can talk to them and sort of walk through their emotions and what they might be feeling. You can get a better sense for money and what to be prepared for in the transfer portal. So I do think this is going to be really interesting to see what sort of impact moving the window to January will actually have. I think there's optimism that it's going to have a positive effect. We're already seeing transfer portal announcements of guys from Central Arkansas of the West state entering the transfer portal, and it's like, okay, cool, but we haven't seen anything of significance just yet. We're going to see still, quality players entering the portal. We're still going to get that. But I think the magnitude of what we saw, especially last year, where it was the last year of the wild, wild west of everything, right? Before the settlement was approved and, all of that. I think last year was the peak madness. And I think there's still going to be madness. I'm not trying to say it's going to be all roses and it's going to be calm on the west. It's not. It's still going to be chaos, but I don't think it's going to be to the same level as it was last year. I think it's going to start to trend downwards, and I think that's going to be a good thing for a program like Utah, who will be competing in a bowl game, having those extra practices to get young players prepared, also having those conversations with other players, in terms of trying to get a better sense and retaining players and talking them, recruiting them back for another year. I think that's all going to be beneficial for Utah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know 10 wins, right? That's another thing that's beneficial for Utah. That forward momentum, the positive state of the program, like that's all stuff that's going to help. But no, it's good to see some of that. It's good to see it going from the wild, wild west to like just the wild west.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. So let's talk about Utah's roster and retention. Obviously, for Utah, Kyle Whittingham has said it many, many times. Still over the last couple of years, Utah is still a player development program. You want players to be in that program for consecutive years. So I think with that in mind, right, you still want the bulk of your roster to come back, right? You still want those guys that we haven't seen a lot of this year. You still want those guys to come back because, these guys are hitting year 2, year 3, year 4 in the program. And that's where you start to see these guys making strides, making an impact, making the progress they need to become sort of impact players. So with that in mind, I think if you can get everybody back, you want everybody back. But obviously, you're not going to get everybody back. You're going to want to hang on to the players that you have as developmental prospects. So let's get that out of the way first, right? You want to bring everybody back that you can because Utah is still a player development program. And we saw that highlighted by the secondary this year with what they did this year from the progress they made in game 1 to game 12. Not a better, more improvement than that group there is that secondary. And I think that's important to keep in mind is this is a coaching staff that still prides itself on player development. And so keeping these guys around, keeping them together should be the focus.
100% agree. I mean, when you have the opportunity to build on a 10-win season, you got to build on it. And
yeah,
the best way to do that is retain the guys that got you there in the first place. So I'd expect that to be Utah's priority, to try to hold on to everybody. I think some of the big ones that you'd have to worry about are, graduating anyway, but there's going to be some guys you'll have to fend off for, but 100% with you. That's the priority, is to retain and try to continue to develop, because you got guys in the cupboard that aren't going to cost you $2 million. Whereas you've had people on the field that, that have produced, and you want to keep them.
Yep.
Bama called, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and there's still going to be that, right? This is still the NIL era where that's still, there still is that Wild West element to this that we're still anticipating. We hope that it's it's not to the same extent that it was last year, but there's still going to be that.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because this season I think Utah can start to kind of use some of that anecdotal evidence of what happens when you do transfer out of Utah, right? You had a cornerback and you had a wide receiver that were going to be the dudes, CB1, wide receiver 1, no question about it. That was a done deal. You're the guy, both of them. And they both transfer out and they both have splinters on their rear because they didn't get that playing time that they were going to get at Utah. So I think that anecdotal evidence can help, right? Hey, if you got to go, you got to go. But just remember that money might be short-sighted, and you being able to use some of that to try to keep some of these guys, I think that could play for Utah, right? And Utah you look at, I want to say is Matt Patton. He puts out like a thread talking about like guys that have left the program and guys that, came into the program, just looking at transfers in, transfers out. And to define it, but it's Utah's done really, really well with the transfer portal. What they've lost in the production that's there versus what Utah's brought in, what's the production there? Utah's bringing in a lot more production than is losing.
Yeah.
As far as just looking at this last season, right?
Yeah. And then you look at the guys that they brought in, right? You look at a Blake Cotton who had a great season, obviously a tough way to finish the year against Kansas with, he gave up a couple receptions for over 100 yards, pretty tough to end his year because he had a really great year. It's just that sour note to finish it on is tough, but he had a great year and he is the guy that you point to as the player development guy in the program this season. From what he looked like week 1 to what he looked like in week 10, 11, and 12, he was really, really effective playing outside, playing man coverage. You look at his numbers. I think he allowed under 50% of targets for receptions, 27 to 57 for, in terms of receptions on targets. Just really, really disruptive, and ended the year with the 72 coverage grade, which is really, really solid. And so I think Utah, when you look at it, there was a tweet from Robert Blecken back in May, and he said, obviously there's emotion when you talk about the transfer portal. Going back to what Utah experienced last offseason, there was a lot of emotion with some of the departures of players that left the program. And you look at some of the guys that they brought in, there wasn't a ton of optimism. There was some excitement with a few guys, but overall, I think there was a lot of concern that Utah didn't really address their losses in the same way that many hoped that they would. But you look at the net results, right? You look at the overall positives. You ended with the positive in Blake Cotton. You ended with the positive Ryan Davis, Devin Dampier, Wayshawn Parker. Obviously, those guys. Larry Simmons, another guy, a big positive. Would have liked to seen him contribute more early on in the year, but the way that he finished, you feel like that's a positive. Other guys that you brought in, Donovan Saunders provided depth. They still feel really, really good about some of the other guys in that room. J.C. Hart through the transfer portal, John Henry Daly the year before being in the program for a year. You look at just the net results, the net positives, and I think Utah came out positive in terms of the transfer portal losses and gains last year.
And that's coming off of a 5-7 season. You know what I mean? Like no real good positive momentum. It was icky in December. Like didn't know who was going to be the offensive coordinator. Felt like there were times it felt like Utah missed out on this guy and then missed out on this guy. Like it just Utah put together a pretty good roster. So it'll be fun to see what Utah can do with that momentum.
For sure. So yeah, I think let's run through the roster real quick and just kind of give some quick thoughts on what we hope to see this offseason. And I think it's really important to start at the quarterback spot because that is a very difficult conversation, very difficult debate to have, right? Devin Dampier, Bird Ficklin, two quarterbacks that both deserve an opportunity to be a starting quarterback at Utah in 2026. I side with Dampier. I value the leadership. I value what he meant to the program this year. And that's really hard to say because it was really fun to watch Bird do what he did this year. And obviously with him, you see the talent, you see the potential, right? You see the way that the ball comes off his hand. He's got zip, he can make throws that not a lot of people can. But uh, I don't want to take for granted what Dampier and just his level of execution, the confidence and swagger that he brings, and just kind of that understanding of the offense. So, it's a difficult debate. I don't think I think Utah would have enough money to bring back both, but I think it's understandable that both want an opportunity to start in 2026. And so regardless of which way Utah goes with this, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be incredibly difficult. It's going to be incredibly criticized, even because there is no perfect answer in this type of situation. You just have to make the best. So I understand people that want to go with Bird. I totally get it. I want to be that guy that says go with Bird, but I don't want to take for granted what Dampier brings to the table beyond the physical attributes and traits that you can see with Bird.
Yeah, and I'd love to play devil's advocate here and give some balance and play the opposite side, but I can't do that. I also side with Dampier. If you got to make a decision, you got to pick one.
Wow.
You said a lot of the stuff that, I don't want to rehash it completely the same, but like it's I loved when you pointed out the Avery Johnson, Will Howard situation. I think that totally, like, that perspective is so important that we need to rerun through that real quick. Avery Johnson showed some flashes, got Kansas State all fired up, huge recruit, blah, 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 super excited, the future, yada, yada, yada. Will Howard, not the sexiest quarterback, kind of gets things done, whatever, wins football games, knows the playbook, knows the team, but they made a decision to go with the young cat and went with Avery Johnson, and now Kansas State's had a couple of seasons, right? And you don't want that. And I don't think that Bird Ficklin is going to be that. I think Bird Ficklin is going to be a great quarterback. But this is a business in a sense. It's not the NFL, but it's still very much, you got to make business decisions. And I think Dampier showed some leadership and showed some clutch genes that down the stretch of the season, coming back against Kansas State and then coming back against Kansas. It's not his fault that, Utah was behind, but it's to his credit that he engineered those drives and made those throws to put Utah in position to ultimately get those wins and those clutches. That meant everything to me, because that's what you need to see. You need to know that when the game's on the line, can he stand on business and get it done? And he did. And Bird's awesome. And I really hope that there's a way that, they can figure it out. And, Damp can have his senior year and Bird can have one more year with him. I think Beck's already shown that he can get them both involved, right? You didn't see too much of that in Kansas. Couple different reasons why there, but don't need to go down another tangent. But you've seen Beck be able to effectively use both. And you've also seen that, with a running quarterback at this level of football, you're going to get banged up at times. You're not going to be able to be 100% and do 100% of what you want. And I'd love to see a way. That would be my ultimate preference, is that you find a way for them to coexist. But if you have to pick one, you got to play like every season's don't like this is your year. Next season, 2026, all in, like you got to go with the guy that's just been around the block a little bit more. And that's no offense to Bird Ficklin. That's not to take away anything that he's done, but Dampier.
Yeah. And going into 2026, right? Whether it be Kyle Whittingham at the helm or whether it be Morgan Scalley, Devin Dampier does a lot to give either coach the best chance at a great season, right? Bird ceiling is, I think we all can agree, undeniably higher, right? Undeniably higher. And in a lot of cases, you want to take the player with the higher ceiling, right? I think in a lot of cases, that's the case. You want to you want to take the more talented player. And I think just in terms of physical attributes, physical talent, athletic talent. Bird has more of that than Dampier, but there is a lot that Bird we just don't know about yet because he doesn't have that experience yet. And I think going into 2026, maybe Kyle comes back. It's an all-in year for Kyle Whittingham and the Utes, where you put every chip that you possibly have to the center of the table. You want Dampier leading the helm on that roster, because the inexperience are just things that Kyle at this stage doesn't probably can't count on. And then with Morgan, right? If it's his first year, you want to start off on a solid note to start your career. And I think Devin gives Morgan the best opportunity at that. Now, maybe, with it being a rookie head coach, maybe you lean into the rookiness of the entire situation, where you side with the young quarterback. And again, I think that would be understandable. But yeah, I think we're in agreement here. All right, let's move on. Running back. Obviously, you want to bring back Wayshawn. Priority number one, bring back Wayshawn. I think, man, what he did this year was remarkable. Obviously, Utah fans wanted to see more Wayshawn early on in the year, clamoring for more carries, banging on the table for more carries, doing a number of different things for more carries for Wayshawn. I think it's important to keep in mind he was dealing with the shoulder issue, pain, all of that. And I think the management of limiting his carries and the physicality that he experienced in those early games really benefited him as we got to the second half of the season, and he really started to show that explosiveness. So I know Utah fans want to criticize Utah coaches for not using him more throughout the year, but I do think it's important to understand Wayshawn was dealing with something. They managed it, and it led to his benefit to finish the year strong.
It really did. He was healthy and explosive down the stretch, and that's because Utah didn't wear him into the ground when he was already banged up. He's obviously priority number one. As you look at the running back room, I would say priority two would be Daniel Bray because of what you saw from him. You've got Nakari Rogers and Bryce Duke who are going to graduate, right? Devin Green, who you didn't really see out there. So you got Racine Guillory, who's a true freshman. So, but Daniel Bray, haven't seen the field and shown some flashes. You'd like to see him stick around, but you got to prioritize Wayshawn, and there's only so many dollars to go around. So you hope that you can convince Wayshawn to, hey, let's run this one more time. You stay here one more year. You know that this is a run heavy offense. You're going to be the featured back. You come back, you do your thing, one more lap around the sun, and then you're going to go to the NFL and you're going to do big things, kid. That's kind of like, that's the pitch to Wayshawn, and he's going to absolutely have people approach him. It's probably already happened, right? But that's got to be Utah's pitch, and you got to make sure that that's not another one of those situations where he goes to Alabama and becomes RB4, or you saw Tulane kid go to Oregon and get zero touches. You know what I mean? And he was like the number one transfer running back in the portal.
Yeah.
So do whatever you can. Keep Wayshawn, keep the vision in line, and
no, I think we agree there. Racing Guillory, I think, is an interesting name because I think it's important to keep in mind he was 17 years old this season. He was a young pup. He was a year younger than everybody else in his class. He reclassified from a 2027 kid to a 2026 kid, or 2026 to 2025. And so I think he could be somebody that potentially plays a much bigger role this year if Utah, if Wayshawn does leave, right? I think Racing Guillory can be that sort of guy that can step into that same sort of workload. You're going to need to bring in a different sort of workhorse, a guy that can be that Nakari Rogers type. But I think you've got some pieces here to work with, and you're still bringing in Bam Bell, and you like what you've seen from him. A Mekhi Bernard clone. He is literally Mekhi Bernard 2.0. It's crazy watching him on film. Like it's nuts. So
just won a state championship and got the MVP in that game too.
Yeah, dude, he is something else. So obviously beating out Oregon for that one. That's a big one. All right, receiver. I think JJ Buchanan, Larry Simmons, those are the guys that you got to prioritize. Make sure that you hang on to them. I love what I saw from them down the stretch. Would love to see JJ get some better targets, but finish, as a big play guy, and then Larry Simmons just doing what he does, catching touchdowns. Six touchdowns on 14 receptions. That's something else. So got to bring those two back, and then figure out the rest.
Yeah, I'd say that's the priority there. One other guy that I'll throw out there, just because he started to see some things at the end of the season, and you kind of were hoping to see some things like all season long, but Creed Whittemore, he kind of be that shifty guy, like he can be very electric. So you hope to see Utah potentially retain him as well.
Yeah. Tight end. Hunter Andrews coming back. You hope that he's going to be healthy. He can be another dynamic weapon. You've got Mateaki Halu, who moved to tight end as well in that same sort of role. You're also going to have who else in that room? Potentially, somebody like Nathan Salmon, who could commit to Utah this week. We'll see on that one. But that's a spot where I've heard Dallin Bentley could potentially get a medical red shirt, and you could bring him back, which would be huge for this offense. But for me, this is a one spot where I hope Utah goes into the portal looking to bring in a tight end.
I think so too. And until we started looking at this, it wasn't as glaring, hey, need a little bit of tight end help, right? Because I think you keep JJ Buchanan. I think he's moved outside. He's not coming back in, right? So right. I know he still gets called a tight end all the time, even by announcers and stuff. But remember, he has moved to the wide receiver room. The tight end position, no, I'm glad that we're sitting here breaking it down, because it's Utah just needs to use that success it's had at tight end to go and find something in the portal. I think you can lean on how good it's been with the position over the last handful of years.
Yeah, I agree. All right, offensive line. This one, obviously, you're starting over. You hope that Caleb Lomu comes back. I know that he's been considering coming back. And I think another year would do a lot for him to solidify his draft stock as, potentially top 10 type of offensive tackle. I think that would be big if you can bring him back. And then, you've got depth in this room. You've had players in this room for a couple of years now that can step into certain positions, right? Specifically, the interior three spots, left guard, right guard, center. You've got guys that can step up there. Keith Olson, Soloto Moyai, guys that were contributing this year as that sixth offensive lineman. Those guys can step up there. You've got Kalolo Ta'aga, who's an offensive tackle that transferred into the program last December. He's a guy now that having another year in the strength and conditioning program this year at Utah, I think will be beneficial to him. And then you're bringing in a pretty exciting group of offensive linemen in this high school class with Kelvin Obot. I think he's going to be a guy that, much like Spencer Fano, can come in and can compete right away for a starting job. So you've got some things to work with there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Utah look for help in the transfer portal at offensive line. But I think if you can get back Lomu, that's a huge win for Utah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I could see, Utah going and hitting the portal again as a position group that's had a lot of success, getting guys developed, getting into the next level. That could be a position group that Utah also goes and tries to bolster through the portal. Will be interesting to see. And then there's just those guys that you're naming when you look at the cupboard, the who's behind this starting unit. It's you got to trust that, Harding, who's been doing this for years, got to imagine he has a plan, and he's going to have some guys ready to go. But it's a unit that's going to need a bit of a refresh. But Utah's totally got a good track record there. So
yeah, totally. All right, defensive line. This one's going to be interesting with John Henry Daly suffering the injury that he did. That's tough. You can no longer count on him for 2026. Logan Fano potentially still has another year. He's a redshirt junior. So he could, I know that he walked, but he could still come back. You lose Aliki Vamahi as a senior. And then you've got a couple other guys, Jonah Lea'ea, Dallas Vakalahi, that could be back. Then you've got 5 young freshman defensive tackles that now will have a full year in the strength and conditioning program, and I think that's going to be really beneficial for them. But you've got Cash Dillon, Lance Holzclaw still, Jackson Jones still in that defensive end room. You've added some good recruits in this class, and PJ Takitaki and potentially Preston Pitts, depending on his where he's at physically. But the defensive end room looks solid. Defensive tackle, wouldn't be surprised to see Utah try to bring in a tackle in that room to kind of a big body that can play a big presence alongside guys, because again, like we talked about, Utah needs to be better in the middle of the defense. So that'll be a priority, I'm sure, is finding a good defensive tackle, a big body guy. Any thoughts there along the defensive line?
No, but I'm totally with you. Get a little bit of a boost. That D tackle room would be nice. As far as DN goes, I think having Logan Fano for another year will be good. Then you got Cash Dillon. I think he was able to get some valuable experience this year. But yeah,
linebacker. This one will be interesting. Losing Lander and Levani, 2 guys that meant a lot to this program from a leadership standpoint. Just 2 guys that everybody looked to for leadership, and that's a role that is hard to replace. It's hard to account for by a lot of fans. Some value that sort of stuff, but it can be lost by others. I think there's a lot in this room with John O'Hall, Trey Reynolds. You've got some up and comers in that room as well, with Cyrus Polu, who's a guy that they love. Christian Thatcher had a redshirt this year. And then Elijah Ellis is another guy as well. And then Matiaki Halu started out at linebacker, moved to tight end, still could be in that linebacker mix as well. So yeah, I think this group is promising. Hopefully you can bring everybody back that you can, Jono and everybody else, because I think this group is the type of group that Colton Swan can really develop and get these guys to play some good football.
Yeah, and I think the linebacker room, you look at like some of those late season struggles defensively, like that linebacker room is going to have a lot to gain from just like looking and just figuring out like what happened. Like some of these things might not get fixed overnight, but I think the linebacker room has got some good room to improve. So,
yep. Yeah. Secondary, Scooby, Smith, Teo, Nate Rabbit. Those are guys that could all be back next year. They could also all be gone next year. I shouldn't say all be gone, but some of them, each of them could be gone. Or each one could potentially be gone. What's the right way to say this? There's a chance that any of them could be gone. Is that the right way to say it?
Tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Till we meet again. No, sorry. No. Oh, that was dumb. That was so dumb. That was so dumb.
Somebody's gonna laugh.
No, yeah. They could be back. They could not be back, but yeah, they'll have the option to transfer to. I'm just kidding. I'm off the rails. All right, so, yeah, the secondary, you've got some guys that I think you hope all of the guys are back, right? You want to do the best that you can to bring everybody back, but there's still depth in this room, like we talked about earlier. You still got Donovan Saunders, J.C. Hart, 2 guys that I think Utah feels really optimistic about. They could, I think those guys will be interesting. Jason Stokes, a young freshman in that cornerback room that I think, there's a lot of optimism around him as well. And then in that safety room, Nathan Tillman, being talked about as the next great safety at Utah. Rabbit Evans, you hope that he's able to come back and have a year to really showcase what he's about as a safety. I think there was a lot of optimism about him potentially emerging as a big playmaker, but just suffering the injury that he did was tough. And then, it's just you've got Hunter Andrews. Not Hunter, Davis Andrews. I do it every time. Davis Andrews coming back from a mission. He's going to be back here in the next couple of days. Is he going to be a safety? Is it going to be a linebacker? I know that he's gotten bigger while he's on his mission. Like he's like 6'3", 212 now. If I remember right, his dad telling me that. He's a big body, but he could potentially factor into that. Brock Fanui Moana returned from his mission last summer. He's another guy that I think will factor in at safety. So, there's some pieces here. There's depth here. You hope that Utah is able to hang on to everybody. But there's a possibility that you have to say goodbye to a name or two from this group. But there's depth and there's guys coming in that I think Utah can build with. So I think this group will be really, really interesting to kind of see what happens, as we get to the transfer portal group or the transfer portal window.
Yeah, no, and that safety room will be fun to watch just because of it started off so fast this year with the injuries that you never really got to see what the plan A was for the safety group. So, with the Rabbit Evans injury, with the Nate Ritchie injury, with bumping Jackson Benny back there, it's just you never got to see what the original plan was. So. Be good to see what Utah does with that safety room. But again, a position that Utah's traditionally been able to, be sound at. So,
yeah. So I think, it's going to be interesting. And then, obviously it's a coaching carousel and this is crazy time. And obviously, Sunday, November 30th, there's been a lot going on. With the coaching carousel, the SEC made 3 big hires in that league alone, right? LSU, Auburn, Florida, all made big hires. Now the carousel, you're starting to see the ripple effect. Now that the SEC has made those big hires, you're starting to see the ripple effect hit elsewhere. You got Penn State potentially bringing in Kalani Sitake, maybe. Hearing a lot of things on that front.
Depends what hour of the day it is.
Hearing 11 million things on that front. That's what I'm hearing. 11 million things on that front. Just a whole lot of stuff out there about that. Yeah, it's before we started recording, I thought that Kalani would be gone. As we started recording, I think Kalani will stay. By tomorrow, that could change again. And what sort of impact could that have? With Kyle Whittingham, we know that, where he's at. And I do think I've heard enough where I feel like he is genuinely at the point where he knows he has to make a decision. And I think, with Kyle, he's deserved the right to genuinely decide if he wants to come back for another year. I think he's done a lot for the program beyond just the win-loss records, right? Beyond that, you look at the University of Utah campus alone, and his success directly impacts the university's overall health. It was interesting when it was, when did we talk to him? President Randall. We had a conversation with him, and he talked about the value of college sports, talked about the importance of college football. And the University of Utah recently published a study and report of the economic benefit of college athletics and what it means in college football specifically, and what sort of economic impact it can have on programs. And you look at some of the quotes, and Utah's student enrollment spiked significantly during their Rose Bowl years. Why? Because of the publicity the program got, because of the success and all that. There's a lot of interest and excitement because of football. Football is advertisement for the university. And Kyle Whittingham's success there has led to just a overall transformation of the University of Utah campus. It is, you go up there now, it is unrecognizable, I'm sure. And that is largely due to the success that Utah had as a football program. Getting the invite to the Pac-12 program completely changed the trajectory of this university, not just the football program, the university. And so, yeah, Kyle deserves the right. If he wants to coach another year, he can make that call. But he also understands that, he's getting close to the end. And so they have a succession plan in place. There's a lot of confidence and optimism in that succession plan. And Kyle, I'm sure, is weighing the pros and cons of what it all means. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see something soon on the Kyle Whittingham front.
Yeah, I think it's in his contract that unless the team is in the college football playoff, he's required to let University of Utah know what his intentions are by the end of day December 5th, which would be what, your Friday?
Yep.
So that does not mean that everybody's going to know, but the decision will be made this week. One way or another, the decision is going to be made this week. There's a chance that decision's already been made. You can maybe listen to a post-game press conference and maybe hear things, but I'm very much with you.
Just like, he does not care anymore, dude.
Is that the last time he gave us a quote that was that good was probably nice leather pants, right? Like,
I think so.
And that was in 2016.
That was a long time ago.
Sad. But spread eagle, coach? Come on, man.
Yeah, dude. He said that.
He said spread eagle. Yeah. In a press conference, Hot Mike says spread eagle and then proceeds to say clothes on or off.
Clothed or not clothed.
Man,
how are you not retired, Whit? Like, you're mentally there already. You are so ready to be retired.
He's already naked on the couch.
Chilling on the couch naked, watching football? Dude, you're retired.
Dude, what a dog. What a dog. Yeah. I think a lot of this, like, rumbling this way or that way, like, you hear, like, every now and then, like, oh, he might not leave and people aren't going to be happy and all this stuff. This is Whit's program. Let's be real for a second. And you're 100% right, Bartle. This is a guy who has built not just a football program, but a university. And in a lot of ways, a state. Like there's people coming to the University of Utah and then never leaving and then helping drive the economy that you see Utah just like it. Whittingham transcends just a couple football games. So he absolutely reserves the right to say, I'm done or I'm going to keep going. And he is very well aware that there's a guy who's really excited and has been built for this position in Morgan Scalley. And you got to trust that Whittingham's not going to do anything to drive it off of a cliff. Like, that's the last thing that Kyle Whittingham wants to happen to the University of Utah. In his mind, he's not thinking, well, when I'm done, who cares what happens with the program? He wants to leave it in a place where it can continue to thrive and go to new heights, right? Loves it. He built it. He'll always be that godfather. He wouldn't be that dude if he was willing to drive it off the cliff and then leave it and say, oh, whatever, bye.
Yeah, no, totally. There's a ton of pride there. He is a Utah man. I don't think it was a coincidence that the last 2 weeks, he's wearing a Utah man shirt. I think that was very, he was very conscientious of that clothing shirt, right? Because we now know clothing is optional for Whittingham. He doesn't necessarily need to wear clothes, when he's doing stuff. So when he's clothed, there's intent there. And the Utah man, sir, it's a great looking hoodie. You can go to Sly's Instagram. He's got a link to the Utah man, sir website. Go to Sly's. Obviously, Stevenson Sylvester. You can help my boy out with his products there. He's got up to 3XL. I may have already ordered one, maybe not. I don't know. But it'll be interesting. So we've got that kind of looming over everything, right? Is Kyle Whittingham's situation. And obviously we know that, when Whit retires, Morgan Scalley is the next man up. And, with that, he's going to get a nice little pay raise to be the head coach of the University of Utah. And again, there is a lot of confidence and optimism in Morgan Scalley as the head coach of the program moving forward. And beyond that, things could get crazy. Things may not get crazy with the rest of the coaching staff. When you have success like Utah has had this year, there's going to be others interested in what you're doing and who's leading that. And the guys that we gave a lot of credit to at the beginning of this episode, Devin Dampier, Jason Beck, other coaches also deserve a lot of credit. Those are guys that are going to have interest from other programs. And so it's going to be when we're in this, the coaching carousel, the magnitude of this carousel being what it is, where you've got programs like LSU and Florida and Penn State, all open jobs, and the ripple effect that's going to have on other programs, right? LSU just hired Lane Kiffin. That means Ole Miss, there's going to be a ripple effect there. And they've already named a head coach in Pete Golding, right? But there's going to be others, right? Do they look to for an offensive coordinator who put up great numbers this year? Well, Utah, they don't traditionally put up the type of numbers that they did this year. What's going on out there? What's Jason Beck doing? What's that offense about? There's going to be interest. And so I think for Utah, as we're talking about players and how important they are, I think above all else, for Morgan Scalley, right, or Kyle Whittingham, whoever it is, regardless of who it is, hanging on to Jason Beck has to be priority number one above all else, because Jason Beck showed this year that he can do a lot with a lot of different personnel. So I think it's going to be really important for Utah to hang on to Jason Beck. He's going to be a hot commodity. He's going to be a wanted man. That's just the nature of the business, especially,
it should be, right?
Yeah. So that's going to be a big key because you keep him and you potentially are able to hang on to a number of different things here.
Yeah, he's got to be the absolute priority, and you gotta hope that he's looking at it. Hey, I spend one more year at Utah. My next move is a head coach job, not another offensive coordinator job. But there are going to be bigger offensive coordinator offers probably out there. There might even be some of those G5 head coaching job offers out there, right? Maybe they want to go back to New Mexico. Maybe Jason Eck, with the season he put together for the Lobos, maybe Jason Eck gets an offer and goes somewhere, and Jason Beck takes over for Jason Eck, and they're right back, down in Kirky chilling.
Luckily, Eck just re-upped with New Mexico. I think a new 5-year deal with New Mexico. So Eck is there. Eck is locked in. So we don't have to worry about Beck replacing Eck at New Mexico.
So Beck
at New Mexico. New Mexico.
New Mexico. He's not going there. You already did it.
No.
But no, it's got to be the priority. And Jason Beck has, he's done the offensive coordinator thing. He's shown his ability to put together offenses at Syracuse, at Virginia, at New Mexico, at Utah, taking Utah from 23 points a game to like 40 points a game. That's a huge transformation. So yes, he's going to get some attention, and he deserves to get all that attention. But with that being said, if he comes back and he's able to hang another 40 points per game for Utah, he's going to be in position to probably get himself a head coaching gig. And I think I'd like to think that's Jason Beck's next stop, is to get himself a program.
Yeah, no, it'll be really interesting. I've heard it's been crazy. Today specifically, this evening, even more specifically this evening, it's been crazy. There's been just a lot of rumblings on a number of different topics, and it's been a lot of different things about this. So I've heard, that Kyle's going to be back in 2026. I've heard Kyle is going to retire, and it's going to be announced this week. I've heard, Morgan Scalley is, just ready, chomping at the bit. I've heard, he's had to float his name around at other coaching jobs. There's just been a lot on the table tonight. A lot of it also Kalani Sitake. What's going on with BYU and the Penn State stuff, right? 1 hour, it sounds like he's set to become the next head coach of Penn State. And it's only a matter of 24, 48 hours before it's all finalized. The next hour, it's, he's going to be back at BYU. He's going to be back in Provo. There's just a lot going on. So it's going to be crazy. And now that we've got those, like I said, those 3 SEC hires done, we're going to continue to see the ripple effects of all of that, and sort of what it does to the rest of the college football world. So a lot to play out. And with recruiting and stuff, I don't think this is going to be as crazy a recruiting, early signing period as we've seen in the past with these types of coaching carousel situations. I think money is a way for programs to keep players locked in more so, with coaching changes like this than they have in the past. Right. So maybe we don't see the sort of, players opening up their recruitments like we have in the past because they're still getting money from the program itself, as long as they stay committed and all that sort of stuff. So a lot to play out. Things could get crazy. Things may not get crazy, but there's certainly the potential for it over the next, few hours, few days. I shouldn't say few hours, but the next few days.
But also the next few hours.
Yeah, it could continue.
Yeah, and we'll be here for all of it. And if emergency live shows need to happen in the middle of the day, we'll be there for you. If we need to put together a space so we can talk through something, we'll be there for you. We'll do everything we can to keep you as close to the program you love or hate. If there's some of those BYU guys listening for whatever reason, we'll do everything we can to keep you as close to the program, as dialed in, as plugged in as we possibly can. And just keep in mind, I want to say it's December because today felt like December 1st, but it's as you've put it today, we're in the silly season.
Yeah, dude, it's silly season. You're gonna lose track of time. You're gonna lose track of days. It's all gonna feel the same, and it's gonna be you're gonna blink, and it's gonna be January. It's gonna be crazy. It's just you're not even gonna see Christmas. It's not gonna happen because you're gonna be glued to your phone, refreshing for updates. This is our lives. It's just this.
Some nuggies in the stocking.
Well, I should, refreshing, right? This is what we're going to be doing. It's just a lot of scrolling, a lot of refreshing, So I look kind of weird doing this. It look weird. I'm going to probably cut that.
Pause. No.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead. We'll wrap this one up. Bennett, we'll be back. We're going to do like a more in-depth, obviously recap of the 2025 season, give some takeaways, some thoughts. More in depth on that
awards,
front for sure.
Things of that.
Yeah. Well, we've got all the stuff, all the ideas. So we'll run through them, but wanted to get this up for sure to give you guys something to listen to on a Monday morning. So appreciate everybody. We'll be back at it throughout the week and looking forward to what this week brings.